Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is the next installment from the incredible new series from Mr. Savage. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled The Memories of Summer, Part 2. Let's get straight into that. The sound of gravel and forest litter crunching under the tires roused Tyler Hillmark from his sleep. He opened his eyes to find this weak light of dawn filtering through his tent and heard waves gently lapping against the shore. He sighed and rolled over, not quite ready to leave Stephanie's side, while his lover arched her back in a stretch and then pressed back into him with a slight wiggle. It was just after 6 a.m. when the wildlife enforcement officer, Ryan Kelly, pulled his Black State-issued Ford F-150 into Wilkes County Recreational Area. His eyes were red and his shoulder hurt from sleeping wrong the previous night. He dared not lift the steaming styrofoam cup of coffee to his lips as he bumped over ruts on the way to the campsite. The call came in from a distressed boyfriend who, upon returning from fishing overnight, discovered his girlfriend missing without a trace. 2 sheriff's patrol trucks, similar to his own, were already on the scene. Ryan had switched from the State Patrol Division 3 years ago. He found that wildlife enforcement was better suited to his condition. He could smell, hear, and see much better after the bite he received so many winters ago. He thoroughly enjoyed being able to put his heightened senses to use searching for missing persons, finding bodies, and even being able to hear the heartbeats change when suspects lie. One of the first things he noticed aside from the torn tent wall as he stepped from his truck were strange marks on the ground. An acrid, unfamiliar scent, and the slightest hint of blood. The county officers were already playing the good cop, bad cop routine as they questioned the distraught man. Ryan could see beads of sweat on the man's brow, a tremble in his feature. He heard his panicked heartbeat and wavering tones in his voice as he was nearly breathless. The man was afraid. Ryan stepped forward and took the man by the shoulder. "All right, son, step over here with me. I want to hear your story." The man nodded, and Ryan looked at the 2 officers. "You boneheads go ask around the surrounding camps and see if anyone saw anything." Ryan and the man walked over to his truck. He got a man seated on his passenger side, and he climbed in, folding the steering wheel up. "Here, son, take this and relax for a minute. Calm your nerves. I know it's not easy, but I need you to be level-headed," he said to him, handing him a cup of coffee he'd brought for the purpose while lifting his own to his lips. He drew out his smartphone and activated a voice recorder as he began. "Now, son, I am Officer Ryan Kelly, badge number 4972, and I'm with the Department of Wildlife Enforcement. I am recording our conversation for future reference, and the recording is admissible in a court of law. You are not under arrest at this time, but you may reserve the right to be silent, and you may choose to involve a lawyer at this time or any time in the preceding future." Ryan rattled off the opening statement like an old pro. The man lifted his cup to his lips and began. "Me and Kimberly, we were out yesterday for a few hours, up until right before sunset. She was tired and said she didn't feel too good, so we came in. I made some sandwiches and she laid down. And around 10 o'clock I went back out. Not too far, just a few miles back up the little river. I stayed out until almost 4 this morning and then drove back. When I got here, the tent was slashed and she was gone," the man said. "All right, what did you do next?" Ryan asked. "I called for her. I then tried her cell, it was still in the tent. I walked around with my flashlight and looked in the area, but I didn't see a trace of her. Oh, that's when I got super scared and I called 911. Alright, son. What does she look like? She's 5'8", maybe 120 pounds. She has dark brown hair, grey eyes, and a tattoo of a fishing hook. It's on her right index finger. Ryan noticed how he didn't use past tense terms. This man believed that woman was alive. This was an important observation that automatically ruled out foul play on his part at least. People close to a murder victim don't typically use present tense terms about the person, especially knowing that they're deceased. Due to the way most people's brains are wired, they subconsciously use terms in past or present tense without realizing it, based off information they already know. Okay, now, what was she wearing the last time you saw her? Well, the last time I saw her, she was wearing a teal blue tank top with white shorts over a pink bikini. She might have changed into a black leggings or one of my t-shirts after she went into the tent, but I'm not sure. I only glanced in there once before I freaked out. Ryan turned off the recording app and looked to the man. Alright, I want you to stay here and relax. You can sit in your vehicle or on the tailgate of my truck. Stay out of the campsite for now. I'm going to go talk to some of the other folks around the park, and a team is heading out here to take some pictures and figure out the details of what happened. Do you think it was the hermit man? Ryan's brow furrowed. I don't think this was the work of that fellow, but I will find her, and I promise you, I will catch whoever or whatever did this. The man nodded as Ryan turned to see the sheriff's deputies walking back briskly. He left the man and strode to meet them. We have a major fucking problem, Ryan, the older of the pair said immediately in a hushed voice. What in the hell are you on about? It's the same MO, across the entire front side of the point, the second officer exclaimed. Alright, call in everyone. Get CSI and GBI and all of them in here now, Ryan ordered, moving to his truck and pulling his ATV from the bed. He fired the Honda's engine and slowly drove around the path that stretched along the point. He had missed the damaged tents in the early morning light, being more focused on the report of a single missing person. He drove back the way he'd came until a familiar scent piqued his interest. And there, just climbing from his tent, was Ryan's maker, Tyler Hillmark, and his blonde companion, Stephanie. He drove the four-wheeler straight into their camp, respectively, of course. A long time no see, Law Dog, Tyler chuckled while tossing slices of bacon into a big skillet over a propane burner. Same here, Wolfman, Ryan replied. I don't reckon you came all the way out here for breakfast, so what's the deal? You'd need a fishing license, boat registration? Tyler mused. I wish that was the case. I'll be straight with you. There's a dozen ripped-up tents on the other side of the point and at least one missing person reported so far, Ryan said with a grimace. What the hell? Tyler stammered while Stephanie froze in shock. Did you two hear or, see anything last night? No, man, we were asleep by 10:30 at least. What are you thinking happened? Well, I smell blood and something strange I don't recognize. Dogman? No, something I've never smelled. Tyler tugged at his goatee in contemplation. Was that there yesterday? Ryan said, pointing to a dark green kayak adrift in the middle of the cove. No, I saw it this morning though. Figured it broke loose in the squall yesterday and carried on in the current. That your boat? Ryan motioned to the large john boat tied up at the water's edge, and Tyler nodded and gave Stephanie a kiss before she took over the bacon frying in the skillet. The two of them made their way around and aboard the boat, and Tyler took the helm. They motored over to the kayak, and Tyler let out a whistle when he saw the pistol. That's a damn Black Hawk, he said, pointing at the expensive weapon. Ryan nodded and dropped his shoulders. He tied a rope to the front handle of the kayak, noticing flecks of blood dried across the floor and on the weapon. They then dragged the kayak to shore along the side of the boat, and Ryan tied it off to a tree. He'd already photographed its original location and took a few shots of the interior. He pulled on his gloves before lifting the weapon and jotting down the serial numbers. He replaced the weapon and wrote down the whole identification numbers. He told the couple to stay around the camp and not to touch the kayak, and they both agreed, and he made his way to his truck. He called in the serial numbers and hull numbers to dispatch. It was confirmed that both had been reported stolen earlier in the year. And the pieces were coming together for Ryan. The kayak had been reported stolen the day after Bradley Kemp disappeared. The pistol less than a month later. If his fingerprints matched, he needed a boat. He called a dispatch and requested a marine wildlife officer to his location with aquatic transportation. And within an hour, most of the state officials were on site and Ryan's transport arrived. He boarded the boat and directed his colleague to skim around the islands and shore. It took all of 30 minutes before the big island gave up her secrets. Footprints and drag marks led to an obscure trail. Towards the center of the island, they found a camp comprised of a plethora of types of goods that had been reported stolen across the last few months. Fingerprints aside, Ryan found Bradley Kemp's wallet, and he could place the man here at the scene, at least in that kayak. Ryan also found a journal. He began turning the pages with a fresh pair of gloves. He felt bile rising as he read the accounts of several abductions led to rape, sodomy, and murder. Even locations where the bodies were buried. Anger flashed through him. This monster had eluded justice for so long. Ryan seethed. Bradley had been smart, cunning, but also sloppy. The best question was, where was the psychopath now? The Georgia Bureau of Investigation team arrived on the scene, fashionably late as ever. The tall, gruff-grain agent took charge as multiple teams set about gathering evidence and photographing each campsite along the stretch of the enormous crime scene. Ryan and two of the original responding officers were relieved after their statements were taken. Special precautions were put in place to keep the media out of the area. And Tyler and Stephanie were heavily interviewed and eventually told to pack up and leave, but not to leave the state, as they were being considered suspects as a precautionary measure. And all the while, from the deepest shadows of the forest, Mika watched his vulnerable prey move throughout the areas he had ravaged the previous night. His big wings curled around him, hanging from the low branches of a massive red oak like a bat. He watched his targets packing away their belongings into the big black truck. A mature vampire and a powerful werewolf. The previous night, he was too weak to challenge them. Soon, however, he will have consumed enough to make them easy prey. Just after sunset, the pair left, with Mika trailing them, gliding silently across the darkening sky on his ever more powerful wings. I was lounging in my chair in my home when my cell phone rang. I answered with a touch of annoyance entering my steely voice. "Hello, what do you want?" On the other end, a familiar voice belonging to the government agent replied. "Zach, we're in need of your expertise once again." What is it this time? That vampire and werewolf couple from the containment incident have been involved in another situation. How long have we been tailing that wolfman? Around 10 years, Zach. You know this already. Yeah, like I told you from day one. We should have killed that monster on sight. You know we cannot do that unless they commit crimes against humanity. They always turn feral. How many was it this time? 2? 4? A whole frickin' family? I asked with my anger beginning to rise. There was a pause on the line, and then the agent started. I was 21 people, 22 if one accounted for is tied in. Zach, it is time. You already know what and when and where. Do your thing. I want triple the normal rate. This won't be easy, I said. Done, was the reply, and the call ended. I packed my gear into my truck, a custom midnight blue 215 GMC Denali. I loaded my notes on the monstrous couple and headed out. I was a 2-hour or so drive from my home near Macon to the crime scene, and about another half an hour from the scene to the couple's home. I knew better than to make my move on them while they were together. My best chance was to capture the vampire while the werewolf was away at work, and from there I would set a trap that could hopefully kill the wolf without a fight. Now, werewolves are only vulnerable while they are in human form. Otherwise, even a hunter of my skill had no chance without the degeneration serum. I had only 2 doses of the stuff, a volatile-looking viscous green gel housed in a still and Lexan syringe, with a tungsten carbide hypodermic needle on its tip. Much like an oversized EpiPen, the syringe have a 100 psi auto-injection feature. The concussion of a high-explosive munitions could render a werewolf momentarily unconscious or at least highly confused, and at night a few flashbang grenades could do the job. In truth, I wanted to kill off that particular werewolf the moment his name came into the database. He was a rare pure breed, having been born that way, not bitten. Whatever caused the mutation, whether a genetic code or some sort of hereditary virus, was finicky at best, laying dormant across several generations. These purebred werewolves age normally into their late 20s, and then the aging process stops. They become immortal and aren't susceptible to diseases, and their wounds heal very fast, even when sustained in their human form. They can be killed in human form, but it takes a massive trauma. I plan to abduct the vampire. They're strong and fast, but their senses aren't as sharp as the werewolves. A gunshot to the back of the skull would render her unconscious for several minutes, long enough to bind her with chains and gag her. And she had become mature, an ultimate seductress by all means. I would need to starve her and then drain her blood to weaken her before I could then kill her. Now, the secret to killing a vampire is pretty simple, yet brutal. Deprive them of blood and food, and bleed them dry. Then carve out the heart and brain. Vampires cannot regenerate once they are weakened beyond a certain threshold. The process will take several days, but it will be for the best. And so long as I couldn't hear her voice and didn't look into her eyes, she couldn't enchant me. It would be simple. I would observe the pair for several days and learn their routines and then make my move. It would not be simple with the variants that could come into play. The week passed normally for Tyler and Stephanie, up until Wednesday when they discovered one of their close neighbours had been reported missing. No news reports were broadcast about the incident at the lake. Apparently officials were keeping the situation hushed for now. There were several instances moving through the night shift gossip at the facility where Tyler worked, and several people had gone missing without a trace around the area. A farmer reported 30 goats and 5 cows vanishing without a trace in the night. People were mostly dismissive of the claims, but Tyler, he was becoming apprehensive. On Thursday night, he was approached by the head supervisor around 3 a.m. about a group of transfer lines needing to be replaced while the treatment plant was in a washdown. Tyler hopped into the service truck and drove the short distance to the plant. The 4 hoses were an easy fix that took him around 20 minutes to complete. He was putting his tools back into the truck when his radio squawked. "Maintenance, need a stack of 3, came the Hispanic voice of the operator. "I'm on my way, Manuel," Tyler said, keying the mic. He drove down to the stacker, a huge culmination of moving parts. some being electric while others being hydraulic or pneumatic. The machine used huge systems of chains and rollers to carry wood like a conveyor belt before depositing it onto a stacking table. Freshly treated wood, still wet from chemicals and washdown, would go onto the stacker so the wooden slats could be placed by hand by the labourers, and this allowed them to be uniformly dried into the kiln. After the kiln, the stacked wood would then come through the stacker again. This time the spacer slats would fall onto the conveyor belt at the start of the machine and carried into a large 3-sided box where the workers would arrange them neatly as they entered. Tonight, they were coming off the slats. In the process, a slat caused the chain to bind and jump off the sprocket, which in turn busted a pillow block bearing and broke one side of the chain. Tyler sighed. He grabbed up a pen, writing down the parts, and drove back to the maintenance building. He returned and got to work. There was 10 minutes of his shift left after he got everything running smoothly. He found a few broken welds, so he ground them out and welded them solid again. Otherwise, everything had gone smoothly. He drove back to the maintenance building, put away his personal tools and locked up his locker. Walked over to the supervisor's office and timed out at exactly 5 a.m. Tyler climbed into his truck, a 1984 Ford Ranger he had restored as a gas saver. He cranked the 2.8-litre V6 engine and let it rumble at a low idle, warming up while he checked his phone. There was a missed call from Stephanie. She likely wanted him to stop and get some food on his way home. He dialed her number, but there was no answer. And figuring she was asleep, he pulled the 5-speed manual transmission into gear and drove towards their home. Unknown to Tyler, the same man who'd sabotaged the stacker while its crew were on their 3 a.m. break was now tracking him through an app downloaded on his cell phone while he was repairing a damaged machine. Tyler drove along the same course he took every night. As he entered a particularly darkened road without houses, a group of deer crossed out in front of him, forcing him to come to a stop. He turned on his light bar and shifted his truck into second gear. Barely gaining speed, he noticed a thin line dissecting the air just up the road. He slowly approached and stopped his truck. Upon inspection, he found it was a steel cable, strung at the perfect height to come crashing through his cap and likely have decapitated him at regular speeds. He almost reached his hand out but stopped. His eyes followed the strand to where it was pulled taut by a come-along attached to a large pine tree. He noticed a rubber mat wrapped around the tree where the chain touched. He followed the other end where he found a huge capacitor rigged to the insulated cable. He understood this was a deliberate trap, maybe set for him, but he couldn't be certain. He retrieved a length of PVC pipe from the bed of his truck. He swiped the heavy wire leading from the capacitor to the cable away and then produced a pair of bolt cutters from his toolbox. He sheared the cable in two directly in the middle, eliciting a metallic warble associated with tensioned cable, being released as it recoiled away from the road and piled up on itself heavily. He turned as a bullet whizzed past his left ear. He ducked, hid in the asphalt, and rolled into the side of his truck as 3 more silenced bullets sparked off the pavement around him. Tyler's eyes glowed red and black flame consumed him. His massive wolf form burst from beside the truck. He was already anticipating the grenades as he closed his eyes and rolled into the ditch while they harmlessly illuminated the night, leaving the very air ringing. He was back on his feet, the tungsten-tipped syringe in grasp of the hooded hunter, missing its mark as Tyler spun with a mighty roar. The hunter spun as well, delivering several semi-automatic shotgun blasts straight into the werewolf's face. The buckshot had little effect as the hunter fell on his back as the demonic beast rampaged towards him. The hunter delivered the second dose of serum to the monster's underbelly, but the cartridge failed to inject. He cursed as the wolf rounded on him, massive red eyes glowing like a wind-blown coal fire. Hatred and malice radiated from the beast. The hunter drew twin swords from his back, now preparing to die, fighting or injured a pissed-off predator enough to escape. The big wolf's lips displayed a menacing grin as black flames flared on his breath. His twin pairs of 7 deadly claws bit into the asphalt, scarring the surface deeply. Suddenly, the beast looked up, and Zack was confused by the sudden display. Figuring it to be a diversionary tactic, he prepared to rush forward. He stopped as the sense of a presence behind him. He turned sharply, blades of his swords like a flash of lightning, halting as they were gripped with an impossible force. Tyler stared, momentarily in shock, at the sight of the evil, winged figure who dropped silently behind his attacker. The man turned, already attacking the monster, but was thwarted as the creature grabbed both blades in a single giant clawed hand. The mouth of the creature unhinged before opening impossibly wide. The gargoyle-like monster moved to engulf the hunter, but instead received a freight train of teeth and claws as Tyler launched his deadly assault straight into the gullet of the thing. He closed his jaws around the torso of the monster and flung his body in a spiral. A symphony of unearthly bellows, shattering bones and tearing flesh, filled the early morning as he relentlessly ensued his death roll. Huge wings flapped as clawed hands extricated the body from the wolf's maw before the powerful wings lifted it into the air. The creature had fled, but not far. Tyler strode towards the shell-shocked hunter, who made no move of aggression. His red eyes locked with the man's. What in the hell was that? His voice boomed in the hunter's mind. Wow, 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 wow. And another one. Wow. Absolutely chest-pounding, riveting stuff. Definitely one of the best werewolf stories. This coming along absolutely beautifully. Hats off to you, Mr. Savage. What a talent you have, and absolutely can't wait for the next part. Thank you so much. Well, guys and girls, wowee. That one was absolutely brilliant. I hope you guys enjoyed that one as much as us. Of course, as ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. Of course, if you think you can pen the next big hit or just want to have a crack at things, please do get in touch with myself through email, which is dmtforestofear@gmail.com. Don't know if you guys can hear that, but that's my parrot squawking away at me, telling me that long overdue his fuss and lunchtime fruit. As ever, guys, thank you all so much. A big welcome to the brand new subscribers. Thanks for joining the family. Hope you guys enjoyed the varied content of the channel, whether it's true or fictional. And as ever, guys, I hope you're all well and happy, family and friends likewise, and keeping fit and focused. But above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.